Next up, we do have another expert in the data sphere, obviously, but this time she is one of Germany's brightest minds in regulation and one of the leading young experts in privacy regulation in DACH. We have Carolin Loy. She's the member of the Bavarian State Office for Data Protection Supervision. In German, Bayerisches Landesamt für Datenschutzaufsicht. So it's both German and English, a little bit more complicated to say that. And there she acts as the head of unit for European cooperation and is responsible for the area of internet, telemedia, and apps. She will be talking to us about how to practically design a consent banner to be data compliant, and because they're in the absence of clear regulations in that area, the question of how to design a consent banner remains kind of open, and she will address the 5 most common mistakes and shows practically how you can do it right. And with that, I want to welcome Carolin Loy on stage.
So, hello. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here today. And as you can see, I have a bit old school here, but I'm not sure if I don't forget my text, because it's the first time that I do this presentation in English. So I hope everything is understandable. And I want to get started right away because I only have 25 minutes to create the perfect cookie banner with you. Okay. Spoiler alert, the perfect banner probably doesn't exist. But that shouldn't stop us from trying. In my opinion, you can find an infringement in any banner, if you want to. But not every violation leads to the consequence that you can't get valid consent with this banner. This is a serious difference on the side of the legal consequence, especially in fine proceedings, but also when it comes to the question if supervisory measures such as an order are pronounced. In every case, it is possible to optimize something, and that is what we are working on today. This means that today I do not want to talk about when consent is required and not about the legal basis. Instead, I want to talk about which mistakes occur most often in practice and how to prevent them. So, very practical and without theoretical discussions. Nevertheless, I have put the requirements for a valid consent on the slide for you, just to remember what we want to achieve. And before we get to my top 5 of the most common mistakes, I would like to say a few words about dark patterns and nudging in general. Nudging and dark patterns are collective terms for a variety of design patterns and other mechanisms intended to influence the user behavior in a particular way. I think these terms are a bit mixed up when you discuss them in the context of social media and consent banners. They are often used as synonyms, although nudging generally is understood in a more positive way. It should help users to make decisions that correspond to their interests. On the other hand, dark patterns are intended to lead users to make decisions that they do not want to, that are maybe against their interests. The problem with both is, of course, the free choice of the users. And since no one can tell if and how much users are influenced by different colors or different contrasts, this is always an individual question and has also been decided case by case, at least in the context of cookie banners. But in practice, it is very rarely that a legal effective consent is denied just because of the choice of the color. The examples listed on the slides do not necessarily have to lead to the serious legal consequence that obtaining consent is not possible with the cookie banner. It depends on the single case and all other circumstances. For example, if there are a combination of those examples or the banner in general. Keep that in mind because this will play a role in the next following 5 mistakes. And now we come to the core. We want to design the perfect cookie banner. For this, I would first advise you to make a few preliminary considerations. Of course, the first question should be, does your website or your app need such a banner? Do you use tools which are requiring consent? At this point, a small note on my presentation. I'm generally talking about consent here, regardless whether it's consent for processing of personal data or consent for storing information or gaining access to information already stored, so setting of cookies. The requirements of Article 5.3 ePrivacy Directive, as well as the requirements of Article 6.1a, derive from the GDPR, in particular Article 4, number 11, Article 7 and 8. So for this presentation, I'm talking about cookies and processing activities in general without a differentiation. So back to our preliminary considerations. What do you want to achieve with your banner? As the name consent banner says, obviously I would say gaining consent. But what you have to put into your consent banner for that? And depending on the structure of the consent banner you choose, you must have a reject option at the first layer, or the possibility of not giving consent. So this is my mistake number 1, the reject all button. Depending on the banner means that is only required in cases when I have to interact with the banner, to use the website, or when the possibility to give consent is available at the first layer. In these cases, you have to implement a reject option also on the first layer. The reject option should be designed in a way that makes rejecting as easy as accepting, usually in the form of a reject button in addition to and on the same layer as the accept button. The alternative to consent must be clearly recognizable as such and must be perceived as such. But this doesn't mean that it have to be identical buttons. You must recognize them, and you must recognize that there is another option. In this context, the design is very important, and we have the most problematic discussions about nudging and dark patterns. Are you using misleading colors or contrasts, or do you highlight the option to consent in any other positive way? You can use the wording reject all for this purpose, or the option could name continue without, just with necessary cookies or something in that way. But it must be clear that the necessary cookies will be installed, although the user denied his consent. A button setting or rejecting as a possibility that leads to a second layer is not sufficient. So remember, the important thing is that the user can recognize that he doesn't have to, that he must not give consent, so he got an alternative option. On the slide, you can see some negative examples which have been figured out by the Cookie Banner Task Force. Remember, this working group was installed by the European Data Protection Board because of a wave of cookie banner complaints from the organization None of Your Business, and as an outcome, a report was published earlier this year. I was allowed to work on this paper, also in this group, for the Bavarian authority. And unfortunately, I saw that I don't have the link in the slides, but I'm sure you can find it on the internet with the keyword cookie banner. It's not that difficult, I think. So back to the examples. The option to refuse is displayed outside the consent banner of the website. Of course, you have the banner in the middle, it's very prominent, and then you can see somewhere else in the back, maybe not readable or barely readable, continue without accepting or something like this. Also, the option is hidden in the text of the banner without highlighting, so you have just the text, the consent text, and there is here you can deny without any underlining or something else. Also, an identical button, which is only visible after scrolling through the consent text, while the option to give consent is visible directly at the beginning of the banner, so that you can see accept, and then you have to scroll down, and somewhere there is deny. The option does not stand out from the background in the color, or is not or barely readable. In all those cases, it is very clear that you can't recognize the alternative option, only with searching and when you know it's there. And this leads to a non-valid consent. In principle, it's very easy. You should ask yourself and answer honestly, can you or any other user recognize that there is another option, that you don't have to search, that you don't have to go to a second layer just by glimpsing at the banner? It is also important for the evaluation that you look at your banner with your smartphone. Then think of yourself how you visit websites, mostly with the smartphone. Here you can often have, intentionally or unintentionally, shifts. Take into considerations that banners being displayed on smaller screens. Therefore, they need to be designed accordingly. I also have an example for you, just to visualize what I just said. I took this from the design guidelines of the Good Practice Initiative for Cookie Banner Consent Management. You will also find a link in the slides for this. This paper was made by a cooperation with and as a result of European multi-stakeholders process with businesses, consumer organizations, digital rights associations, academia, and also with government authorities. Our authority was working for this paper as well. And here you can see the options are of consenting and not consenting are equally designed and equally presented on the same layer. The choice option can be highlighted by color, or it's also possible that you use the font size or the placement which match to your corporate colors of the service provider, for example. There you also can see the adjust option, which don't have to be highlighted as a button, but can be presented less prominent. And again, you see that probably no banner exists which is perfect. Here I would complain that it only refers to cookies. You can see it's just talking about cookies. And I'm sure that the banner also wanted to gain consent for the data processing from the data which is gained by the cookies. So, of course, you can do this with one consent, but you can combine this, but it has to be clear and explained. So, let's move on to mistake number 2, the information of consent. With the guidelines on consent, you have an overview of the individual points and also which information have to be given on the first layer. So, getting the information actually is really easy. But the problem is that the transposition is often insufficient or does not provide real information. But why? I think the main problem is that many controllers themselves do not exactly know what tools they are using or what data processing is taking place on their websites. Therefore, you should first create an overview and ask yourself if you know why are you using this tool and what is this tool doing, and of course, is it really necessary? The fewer tools or the fewer data processing you have, the less information you have to put in your banner. And of course, this is also the sense of the data minimization principle. You should ask yourself, what exactly does this tool? Do you understand it, or do you use this tool just because it was offered or it's very popular? Can you give the required information, or are you just guessing? If not, you should not use this tool. You cannot obtain an informed consent for something if you are not informed yourself. This also applies to apps. Here you have to pay attention that some tools work differently on the smartphone than it does on the website. So don't just copy the text. You have to check if it fits also to your app. And this leads directly to mistake number 3, how you provide the necessary informations. Form and language of the cookie banners should be informative, fair, and not be designed to manipulate or mislead users. In practice, you often see pre-formulated empty phrases which are actually saying nothing. The purpose of collecting and processing data should be described in transparent categories with clear and easy understandable wording. There should be tick-in boxes or slider buttons allowing users to actively consent to cookies being set or used for a specific purpose. Don't just use supposedly known categories or classifications as required or functional without explaining them. And believe me, at least every third controller who has to answer my question has a different understanding of what this category means, and of course, different tools which he uses for the category. It is important that the explanations are in accordance with the principles of the mistakes I mentioned before, especially regarding to neutral wording. Furthermore, general explanations of these purposes should be specified according to the concrete characteristics of the cookies you used on your specific website. So, you have to explain the categories and especially what belongs to which category. Ask yourself, when you finish your consent text, do users understand what they are giving consent to? Do they know what's happening with their personal data? So, and if you now know what should be included in the banner, however, the question arises, how do you submit the information in your banner so that it won't overload? Because information overload also falls in the dark patterns area, when the user stands in front of a text wall and simply gives up and accepts all. How do you find a way between clarity and information? And that's the mistake number 4, the construction of your consent banner. You should definitely try to avoid too many layers, or even layers and sub-layers and so on. Don't build labyrinths. Perform structured through your banner. Work with different tools, mouse overs or drop-down menus, or think of something new. You can invent something, or you can think, how would it be easy? Where does the information have to be found? And if the banner looks overloaded or confusing, then ask yourself why and try to improve this. The user doesn't have to search for the information. Explain how the banner works, maybe also a solution. And also here, keep in mind that many users looking through your website on the smartphone. And there it looks even faster overloaded, and no one wants to scroll for 5 minutes. So, and if we try to prevent the mistakes number 2 to 4, your banner could look like this. This is also an example I took from the design guidelines I mentioned earlier, and you can have a look at this if you try the link. And as you can see, working with design, scripts, and underlining makes the banner more structured. Just like you would do it in a PowerPoint presentation. There you won't put just the text there, so you would highlight the important things. Design and language of the choices should be balanced and neutral, not preferring the consent option compared to the reject option. Wording or visuals in cookie banner should not be used in a way that confers to consent, and you don't give a bad feeling if someone wants to reject. Maybe you know the banners when you put the reject button and then comes another banner with, are you really sure this is not good for us, or something like that. This is also dark patterns because the user thinks, oh no, I have to give my consent. So, and then the example goes even further. Here you can see how the different layers are used and what option you have to keep it clearly arranged. It's just an example. And don't forget, the default choice always has to be no consent, no opt-in or off. So I think this looks pretty good, but I still have one mistake left. Let's see. Many controllers simply use consent management platforms or one-fits-all solutions or one-fits-all texts and adopt the solutions that don't fit to their website. Therefore, I would like to point out that you are still the controller. You remain the controller, even if you are using a consent management platform. Also for the consent management platform, of course. You are the one that is accountable. Here, often cookies are set that go beyond what is necessary, and the controllers of the website cannot explain it or only to a limited extent. On the other hand, I want to encourage you to develop your own solutions. You should know your website and your processes best. Ask yourself how you get users to read your consent text and how you can create added value and not just keep any banner because you have to. And with this being said, we are already at the end. And I have a last slide for you, a short conclusion with a checklist with the important points. And for me, the most important point is, if you designed a perfect banner, so please send it to me. I would be very happy to have an example for my next presentation. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you can take some practical points with you. And yeah, we are all waiting for the perfect banner. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you to the center of the stage with me? Very, very nice examples, Carolin, so English, no? We have a little bit of time left, so, and I also have a lot of questions, because what I didn't tell you guys yet is that I also work in marketing, and I should know all of that, but I have no clue. Apparently, like a lot of marketeers. Anyways, who of you guys has a question for Carolin about consent banners before I shoot off with mine? Ooh, hands in the air. We have Margot coming from the back with her microphone.
Hello, I'd like to ask what the position of the Bavarian authority is regarding international data transfers. Can we pack consent into the cookie banner here?
No, clearly no. This is also in the Orientierungshilfe für Anbieter von Telemedien. I don't know the English name for it. The guidelines of the German authorities, and there we got a clear statement that we don't allow data transfers in the website context on the legal basis of Article 49. Just in single cases when you have on a, I don't know, if you have it on one level that you, for a specific case, you want to have the consent, but not in general for all your processing activities.
And, is there a decision of your authority on that issue already?
No, it doesn't need to be a decision because we are talking with our controllers, and there was no need.
Okay.
Hello. Recently, I saw in a website that they weren't actually trying to gain consent, but they were explaining that they only collect data through adjustment cookies, the essential cookies, but they only informed that they had this type of cookies, that they didn't have any third party. Is it okay to create a cookie banner just to inform this type of processing?
That's a bit a difficult question. For the user, I would say it's an added value that you have the information. You can see it right there, because if there's no cookie banner, the user thinks, oh, no cookies, and then he saw the cookies, and then he's confused. But from the legal kind of view, I would say you don't have to. You don't have to put a cookie banner here, and it may be misleading, because if you have a cookie banner there, you gave the user the impression that he can reject something, or that he can deny his consent, and there's no consent need.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up questions from the audience? Don't be shy. Yes, over there.
Thank you first very much for this interesting presentation. I would like to know if you have an advice for a multinational. So we have a lot of rules we need to comply with, and not all data protection authorities are aligned on what they want to see. Particularly the one in Italy has a very peculiar, how to say, they really have a very peculiar design for their banner. And so are then multinationals expected to have like regional banners, or what would be your advice for a multinational on that?
I'm with you, that's very difficult sometimes, and it should not be difficult because it's or GDPR or the ePrivacy directive. And I think the authorities try to have a common intention and common guidelines, and they are still working on it. But for the controllers now, I think you have to find the way where you avoid infringements. But I think the Italian version of the reject all button or just close the banner also works with the German
version.
With the German version, thank you. Because if you have the X there and you can and you say closing without making a decision or something like this, it would fit for both solutions in this case.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think it's rather a question of design. So we want to have all our websites looking like that, with a cross in the upper corner, and then if we deem this a rejection, then we cannot ask for consent again. So it is really well, an interesting and very challenging project. Thank you.
Okay. Last chance. Oh, we have one question at the very front. Front seats, please.
Thank you, Carolin, for your presentation. One question arose for me. You said, check if your CMP needs consent.
Yes.
Why would a CMP need consent, and how would you collect that if the CMP does not load?
Yes, that's a problem. And I know that it's very funny when you say it like this, but some CMPs set cookies which requires consent. And so you have to get consent for this, and that doesn't fulfill the sense of the CMP, but I think that's the problem of the CMP, maybe. But you should think about it, and you have to have a look. Don't just trust the CMP provider and say, oh, everything would be fine. So just check if there are if there are just cookies set which are no requiring consent.
Follow-up thought?
Yes, because I don't know any CMP that does not set a cookie.
But there are some CMPs which are set more than the cookie to store it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I get it. Thank you.
I've seen it. Okay.
Before I send you off stage, we still have 2 more questions. The gentleman in the front and then also the gentleman in the back.
Thank you, Peter from Spirit Legal. My question is, does the Bavarian Data Protection Authority actually enforce their perspective on Bavarian businesses? Or is there a new enforcement wave coming next year? Because there are so many like really, really bad cookie banners in this world.
We already enforce it, and we think that's very important. Of course, the reject all button is very important for us, and we enforce this already. I think some of the bigger websites, maybe these are something you mean, which are not quite good. It's a long process because they also have lawyers, yeah, and we have to talk a bit, and they say, oh, we do it that way, so maybe we say, don't accept and settings as one button is okay, and we say no, that's not okay, but it will come a bit more and a bit more for some famous websites, I think.
All right, Margot, we had one more question. It's very dark, but I think that's Stefan from our morning panel at the right.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's very helpful to get the mindsets and thoughts about one data protection authority, in this case in Germany. I think it was the question here already regarding the Italian option with the cross, right? Mm-hmm. So my first question is, and I know you have a European, let's say, exchange more and more regarding your recommendations, right? As far as I know regarding this decline all, I would say, option, So there's the button, there's the link, there's, especially in France, the CNIL allows a link. They made actually very specific UI examples. I think that's very helpful. The question for me, because the CNIL is considered as one of the strictest data protection authorities, I think they also have a lot of people working there for these topics. What would you think about this decline all link? Yeah, because you mentioned something, if I understood it correctly, regarding the X in Italy, that also could consider it as compliant regarding this decline option. What is your thoughts about the CNIL? Because I think it's very difficult to understand for a company. What should I do right now? Yeah, and
I think you mean the continuer sans accepter. Oh, okay. Yes, in this case, we would say you can see the option. It's a case-by-case decision. So you have to check if you can see it. Can you recognize the option? Then we would say to the controller, oh, maybe you can put it in a more prominent way so that the user can see it more clearly. But we wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't take supervisory measures if there's the link like in France. In France, it's very common to do so. In German, not so. But it wouldn't be an infringement.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we've been really grilling you here, and also it's really hot up here on stage. I will send you up with my very last question.
Okay.
Do you always accept all or decline all?
I try to decline, but if there is no reject button at the first layer, sometimes it's really difficult to find it. And if I'm in a hurry, I also accept all.
All right. Thank you, Carolin Loy.
Thank you.